Welcome to r/Malicious Compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you guys for subscribing, likes, and supporting in the comments. Today's first story is, go ahead and ignore my warning. I'll take all the overtime you'll give me. Every morning after loading the truck with the day's deliveries, the driver would fill out an inspection sheet ensuring that they had looked over the truck and that everything was functioning as it should. Pretty standard procedure, and any good company pays attention to these logs. Tuesday, as I was making local deliveries, I noticed that the transmission in the truck was acting up. It was having a hard time changing gears and would occasionally lurch. I made sure to call my manager to let her know what was going on, and was instructed to just keep making my deliveries. I noted the problem on the daily inspection sheet, and then when I got back to the store, I went ahead and sent an email explaining the problem to my manager and her boss to cover my A. Friday morning, after a nice 2 days off, I was assigned the same truck. When it came time to do my morning inspection, I realized that no one had driven it while I was gone, and therefore the truck had not been taken to a shop or seen by a mechanic. I was also only 2 hours away from hitting overtime, and my manager decided that instead of being stuck making local deliveries for 10 hours, instead I would take one large delivery 2 hours from the store, and in my work week with only 2.5-ish hours of overtime. Before I left, I made sure to remind my manager that the truck had been acting up, and she again told me to just keep making my deliveries, and to call her if there was a problem. Well, guess what happened? An hour and a half after leaving the store, while driving through rural Arkansas, the transmission on the truck crapped out, but I was able to coast into the parking lot of a long-abandoned gas station, which was especially nice, since the road didn't have a shoulder. My manager was not pleased when I told her that the truck was now undrivable, and that I hadn't even made my one delivery yet. She instructed me to let the customer know we would have to reschedule their delivery, while she arranged for a tow truck. Well, guess what happened next? The customer absolutely refused to reschedule their delivery. On my truck were 3 pallets of hardwood flooring, and the customer already had a crew on site, waiting for the flooring to arrive so it could be installed. They were furious and insisted that no matter what, the flooring had to be delivered today. The customer had ordered about $8,000 worth of product, so when they called the store upset, manager guaranteed that the delivery would be made that day as promised. So guess what I got to do? I was paid to sit in the truck and wait for the other delivery drivers to finish their local deliveries for the day, then drive out to where my truck was stranded, transfer the flooring to their truck, and complete the delivery. It took 9 hours for the other truck to arrive. The guy who was in the truck with me was livid, and likely would have quit there on the spot if he wasn't stranded with me. Each truck is required to be manned by 2 people, and luckily me and the guy got along pretty good, but he was cussing up a storm by the time the other truck arrived. Once the other truck did arrive, it took us nearly an hour to swap out the pallets from our truck to the next, using pallet jacks on uneven surfaces. Finally, we got that done, and we were able to make the delivery and all go home, when we realized that there were 4 of us all together, but only 3 seats in the truck that came to get us. Someone would have to wait while another coworker drove the hour and a half to come get them. My co-driver was determined to get out of there that instant, and neither of the guys who came to get us wanted to stay either, so I happily volunteered to. My manager had already left for the evening, but the closing manager was able to get a cashier, who I was friends with, to agree to pick me up in their personal vehicle. They did so on the clock and got reimbursed for the mileage, once their shift was over at 8 p.m. It was nearly 10 p.m. before my ride finally arrived. I had him stop and pick me up McDonald's on the way, since I had run out of water and chips hours before, and midnight when we finally got back to the store. Everyone else had left hours before, but the closing manager had to remain until we came back, so he could lock the store up after we clocked out and went home for the night. I clocked out that night having put in an 18-hour shift, 16 hours of which was overtime. When I came in at 6 a.m. the following morning, instead of being assigned a truck for the day, I had to have a meeting with HR, my manager, her manager, and the store manager to explain just what the F happened. Luckily, my emails and truck inspection slips were enough to cover my A, and instead of getting fired, HR let me go home to catch up on sleep, while my manager got her A chewed out instead. We had a nice new rental truck waiting for me Sunday when I came back, while my usual truck was in the shop. The second story is, Army Sergeant humiliates me in front of our platoon. Let me destroy his chance of being promoted. Hey guys, this story comes from last year, while I was enlisted in the CA Army National Guard. During my time in the National Guard, I was assigned to the Recruit Sustainment Program. In this program, new recruits are prepared for basic combat training. At the time, I was a private first class, and I reported to an NCO, who I will refer to as Staff Sergeant G, SSGG, as his assistant squad leader. SSGG was a toxic soldier who applied to officer candidate school, but was rejected. To make up for the loss, he tried asserting his dominance in other ways. For example, during combatives, Army MMA, he ordered new recruits with 2 hours of training to fight him. This is the equivalent of asking a white belt to fight against a black belt. Furthermore, he displayed blatant favoritism by assigning the worst jobs, such as fire watch, where you needed to stay up during the night cleaning the barracks, to those he did not like. While our relationship wasn't great, we got along decently for the most part. However, that began to change when I received a 4-year national scholarship from ROTC, another officer training program. Besides covering the tuition of going to college, the scholarship also guaranteed that you would commission as an officer when you graduate college, meaning I would soon outrank him. In order to transfer out of the National Guard and into ROTC, I had to get a form signed by my unit commander, which I submitted to SSGG, who was then expected to pass it up the chain of command. However, the first sign of our relationship fraying was his forgetfulness to pass the form up. Every time I asked for an update, SSGG gave me the runaround, claiming that the form slipped his mind and promised to pass it on in a few hours. After a month, I decided enough was enough and asked a third person to help me with the paperwork. She went above and beyond and got my paperwork to the commander within a week. SSGG was not happy that I flouted his authority, causing our relationship to take a significant turn for the worse. He began to nitpick my uniform, looking for any slight mistake that he could punish me for. One day it was that I missed a small patch of facial hair while shaving. In the Army, we're expected to be clean-shaven, while another time it was my name tape, which was slightly ajar after a day of field training. SSGG brought down the hammer on me, and I would be yelled at in front of the squad of recruits we were training. For every infraction, I did 100 push-ups. I took these punishments in stride, as not only was SSGG technically correct, but also arguing with a superior in front of a bunch of new recruits would send the wrong message to a bunch of future soldiers. As I continued to avoid confrontation, SSGG continued to grow bolder. Throughout the following months, he ramped up his nitpicking. Eventually, he called me out in front of a platoon, 4 squads of recruits. "Hey, one tripping Bengali," SSGG inquired, "what's your ASVAB score?" The ASVAB is a test you take when entering the military. The percentile you score in becomes your actual score, so if you place in the 84th percentile, you have an 84 on the test. Not sure where he was going, I responded, "SSGG, I got a 99 on the ASVAB, the perfect score." He stifled a laugh and rhetorically asked me, "With such a high ASVAB score, why aren't you going to West Point, the Army's prestigious service academy?" Knowing full well I turned down a letter of assurance from West Point. Stunned by such a question, I stood there quietly. He exploited my shock and turned to the platoon and said, "Even a smart A like one tripping Bengali can't get far in the Army on his brains alone." As he broke out laughing away, I was livid. I swore I would get revenge against SSGG for humiliating me in front of the platoon, but I knew I couldn't openly defy him. I waited for a chance to get back at him, a chance which he kindly gave me at the end of the day. During the day, we had been conducting training on military operations in urban terrain, using paintballs. We had a mock village in which we had been fighting in all day. Obviously, the village had been covered in paint, as untrained recruits mag-dumped paintballs at each other. The people responsible for the maintenance of the facility were fine with this, as long as we cleaned it up ourselves. As per company equals 4 platoons of 4 squads policy stated, we could not go home from training until we had cleaned all of the equipment and locations we had used, which included the mock village. Once training completed, SFCM, SSGG's boss, assigned our squad the task of cleaning the village. However, SSGG decided he had better things to do than to supervise cleanup and ordered me to take over. However, we had no cleaning supplies and went to SSGG to raise my concerns. Seeing the approach, SSGG turned to me and yelled, "One tripping Bengali, what part of clean the village did you not understand?" in front of the entire squad. "Sergeant," I explained, "we can't clean, as—" "Can't do what?" he interrupted. "You want to be an officer, so go out and lead. I won't be there to hold your hand in combat. I can't solve all your problems. Make do with what you have and improvise." Turning to his friend, SSGG stated, "Can you believe this guy wants to be an officer?" Cue malicious compliance. Looking out into the field and seeing cut grass, I got an idea. "Yes, Sergeant," I said, and walked back to our squad. When I got to them, I stated, "We don't have any cleaning supplies, so we're going to improvise. You see the piles of cut grass out on the field? Go grab them and use them as brushes." My squad looked in shock and awe. I gleefully responded, "Sergeant's orders, we're to make do with what we have." 2 hours later, we were still scrubbing paint off the walls. Meanwhile, every other squad in the company had finished their assigned tasks and were waiting for us to finish our work so they could go home. SFCM was getting annoyed. He correctly surmised there was no reason why we should be taking so long to finish a simple task and decided to investigate. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him approaching and turned to greet him. "What in the actual F are you doing, Private?" SFCM screamed. "Why are you trying to scrape paint off with grass? Why the heck are you not using your brushes?" "Sergeant," I responded, trying not to break out laughing. "I asked SSGG for supplies, but he ordered me to make do with what we have." SFCM couldn't believe what he was hearing. He went off to the recruits in our squad to independently verify my claim. When 4 different recruits told the same story, he beckoned me over and called SSGG. "SSGG?" SFCM asked in his calm and controlled firm voice. I heard some mumbling, which I assume was SSGG, greeting, followed by the roar of, "Why the F did you not give your squad cleaning supplies?" from SFCM. I was on the brink of dying laughing, while SFCM yelled at SSGG over his incompetence while demanding he bring over the supplies. All SSGG could muster between each roar was a quick, "Yes, Sergeant." After SFCM finished his tirade, he looked at me and said, "Carry on, Private," as he walked away. As soon as he had turned the corner, I burst out laughing. 5 minutes later, SSGG drove up with cleaning supplies. Sweating, he distributed the cleaning supplies, worried that the SFC would find him in person and tear into him again. Half an hour later, we were back with the rest of the company getting dismissed. However, the day did not end there for SSGG. Through the grapevine of a friendly NCO, I found out that SSGG had gotten in a lot of trouble with the company's leadership over his stunt. Not only had the 1SG, SFCM's boss, privately tore into him, but he also made sure the incident showed up on SSGG's evaluation report, which will make it far harder for him to get promoted. As far as I know, SSGG is still in the same position he was in last year, while I've started my officer training. Sure feels good knowing that SSGG got what he deserved. Edits. For those in the know, I was a split ops and a green phaser when I left the National Guard. I was released through a conditional release. For those wondering why this unit seems so weird, it's because this is not a traditional unit within the Army. It's a National Guard RSP unit, a unit for recruits who haven't shipped to training. At the time of this story, I was a split ops soldier who had just finished BCT. Because split ops soldiers are not MOSQ, we are of no use to our actual units. Thus, we return to RSP, where we're assigned to a squad and assist the SL in whatever they want. For me, it was normally acting as a teaching assistant during classes on land nav, first aid, etc., and acting as a lane walker. For those asking why I chose not to go to USMA, I got into a school that is more academically prestigious than West Point. As the school offered me a scholarship in conjunction with ROTC, I will graduate debt-free. To me, this negated USMA's major advantages over its peers. Furthermore, I have the freedom to do what I want with my summer. For example, this summer, I've been in India studying Hindi through an ROTC program called Project Go. I would never have had the opportunity to do this in West Point. In the end, I'll be a 2LT, regardless of whether I go to USMA or commission through ROTC. So given ROTC's clear advantages, I opted for ROTC. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.